since news that his lawyer got a restraining order against Stormy Daniels, and his press secretary essentially admitted there was some sort of agreement between President Trump and the adult film actress. We learned just moments ago that the president is very unhappy with how that press secretary, Sarah Sanders, handled this. So let's start with that. And Abby Phillip live at the White House this morning. Abby, what have you learned?
Well, good morning, John. A lot going on here, as you just mentioned, but this saga with Stormy Daniels seems to be the one thing that the White House can't dodge. President Trump, according to a source close to the White House who spoke to CNN's Jim Acosta, is not very happy with how Sarah Sanders handled this whole situation during the press briefing room session yesterday. And it's partly because of what she did say this time around that may have opened the floodgates for some new inquiries about the president's involvement in this whole thing. According to this source, Sarah Sanders' comments were essentially putting the Stormy Daniels storyline on steroids yesterday. What she talked about was this issue of arbitration. She acknowledged for the first time, we believe, based on what the White House has said that the president is a party to some kind of legal agreement involving Stormy Daniels, and that the president is directly involved in this whole thing. Listen to what she had to say yesterday.
The president has addressed these directly and made very well clear that none of these allegations are true. This case has already been won in arbitration.
You said that there's arbitration that's already been won? By whom and when?
By the president's personal attorneys, and for details on that, I would refer you to them.
But you're aware of them, so what more can you share with us?
I can share that that the arbitration was won in the president's favor.
In the president's favor is really the big part of that whole exchange. It's critically important because for a long time the White House had said that the president denies this, that he had no knowledge of anything his lawyer was doing on his behalf when it comes to Stormy Daniels. Now it seems very much that there was a case that he is at the center of, that the White House now acknowledges exists, John.
Yeah, that was a very interesting, if not a bit strange, acknowledgement, Abby. We're going to talk much more on that in a second. Stick around because we need to come back to you for a moment in other news. First, though, I want to get more on the Stormy Daniels situation. CNN's MJ Lee joins me now. Where are we today, MJ?
Well, John, the simple question that the White House has yet to answer is, what did President Trump know and when? And I just want to point out two things in particular that are particularly problematic for the White House, some of which Abby already alluded to. The first is Sarah Sanders' statement yesterday that this case has already been won in arbitration. And I'm going to return to that in a little bit. The second thing that she said was that when she was asked if President Trump was aware of the payment that Michael Cohen made to Stormy Daniels, this is the $130,000 that he set up to have wired to her lawyer in October of 2016, her answer was not that I'm aware of. This was not a no. And as you can imagine, Stormy Daniels' lawyer has a lot to say about everything that Sarah Sanders said at the White House briefing room yesterday. First and foremost, he is very strongly rejecting the idea that Michael Cohen acted on his own, essentially that he didn't consult with President Trump when he had this payment made to Stormy Daniels, and that he acted essentially without Trump's knowledge. Take a listen to what he had to say to Anderson Cooper last night.
The idea that somehow President Trump didn't know anything about this and that Attorney Cohen was just running off and doing what he thought was best without any consultation with President Trump, it is patently absurd.
And now coming back to this arbitration that Sarah Sanders says was won in Trump's favor, she appears to be, and this is according to Stormy Daniels' lawyer, she appears to be talking about this temporary restraining order that a private mediator issued against Stormy Daniels last month on behalf of Essential Consultants. Now, this is the private company, if you remember, John, that Michael Cohen had set up back in October of 2016 so that he could make this payment, the $130,000. And Stormy's lawyer is now saying that they didn't even know about this arbitration, that they weren't even given a heads up about this. And this essentially, he says, is one of the many times in which Michael Cohen tried to silence Stormy Daniels. I just want to play a different soundbite from last night on what he had to say about that.
And I want to be really clear about this, all in an effort to keep this matter under wraps, keep it out of public view, hide the facts, and silence my client. There's a pattern and practice that has governed the way that my client has been dealt with by Mr. Cohen and President Trump for months. And that pattern and practice, Anderson, has continued up until even a few hours ago.
Now, John, keep in mind, this lawyer is saying that they have not yet shared everything that they have with the public, meaning more information could soon be coming to light.
All right, MJ, very interesting. Thanks for laying that all out for us. I appreciate it. Joining me now, CNN political analyst Molly Ball, Josh Dawsey, and Rachel Bade. And guys, to me, this story is in a different place today for three reasons. Number one, the White House response right there, which was strange. Number two, because you now have this lawyer for Stormy Daniels who's all in. It seems like he is, girding for this fight and excited for it. And number three, you're beginning to see Congress opine on the matter, which opens up a whole different can of worms. Let's take all three issues one at a time. Josh, first to you. You cover the White House. I'm going to use the word wicked for the second time in 2 days here. Sarah Sanders' response was wicked weird yesterday when she mentioned the fact that this arbitration thing was going on. Do you have a sense, covering the White House, why she did that, and what's the fallout today?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what Sarah Sanders is supposed to say. The president and his lawyer give $130,000 to an adult film star just before an election. The story cannot come straight for several weeks. At first, they deny the payment. Then they say they made it through a LLC. Now there's arbitration. The White House has dodged these questions repeatedly, have said literally nothing other than to say we've already handled it, even though they haven't. And we've, repeatedly sought answers on what really happened here. I think Sarah Sanders yesterday was trying to say that the president's lawyer had won in a court in California. I'm not sure if that made it better, but at the same time, I don't really know how else you defend this at the podium. I mean, what is a better recourse for her?
Well, the issue is it appears to be the truth. It appears to be the truth that the president is somehow involved in this lawsuit, in this legal action. The problem with the truth is it would make the president more connected to this issue than the White House has said to this point. Molly Ball, Mark Sanford, congressman from South Carolina, former governor from South Carolina. Yes, an interesting figure to be commenting on potential scandal, as lovers of history and hiking on the Appalachian Trail will remember. Yet his comment, Molly, is fascinating on this. I want to read this to you. Hush money is a big deal, particularly if it's not ancient history. We're talking about a payment in October of 2016. That's not a long time ago. We're talking about money that was exchanged in the midst of a presidential campaign. I think that's problematic, and I think that needs to be viewed for what it is. I mean, again, this is Mark Sanford, but still, a Republican congressman is now saying, you know what? There are legitimate questions about this.
Well, we'll see if any other Republicans decide to take that line versus the sort of pretend this doesn't exist act that most of them have been doing. Sanford has been more openly critical of Trump than very many others in the Republican Congress, in both the House and the Senate. But I think that what he's saying has some merit in that this is an issue that needs to be taken seriously, and it is going to be, in political terms, harder and harder for Republicans to not deal with not only this, but the whole host of scandals and potential scandals and issues that have ensnared the president and that they have tried to stay away from. They've tried to keep their distance as much as possible and pretend that they are just, solely focused on tax policy and that kind of thing, and they just sort of don't see the fires enveloping the White House. And then you have someone like Mark Sanford stepping forward and saying, you guys, this is a real thing. This is an issue for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, look, either the president is telling the truth or Stephanie Clifford, a.k.a. Stormy Daniels, are telling the truth. One is, they're mutually exclusive. One has to be right, the other has to be wrong. The American people at a certain point deserve to know what's going on here. And Rachel, this brings me to my third point. There is this lawyer, Mike Avenatti, right now, who is working on behalf of Stephanie Clifford, Stormy Daniels. He seems to be pushing this issue. We saw him on Anderson last night. He doesn't seem to be about to give this up, and he's the kind of figure you can envision being a consistent thorn in the White House side here.
Yeah, it looks like they're definitely in for the long haul here. There was a question posed to him at one point about, if she received more money, would this change her interest in coming forward and talking about this? And he said, no, look, the cat's out of the bag. It's far too gone for that. We are moving on and just want the truth to get out there. I want to get back to the congressional angle that you just were asking about, because if this was a Democratic president, you know that the Republican Congress would be scheduling hearings right now and getting their pens ready to sign subpoenas and haul people in for questioning. But Republicans, Mark Sanford, he really really is an anomaly. I was talking to a Republican, a very senior Republican on the Hill yesterday, who was upset that he had just gone on TV to talk about tariffs, and they had asked him about Stormy Daniels, and he was like, I specifically asked the producers told them I didn't want to talk about this, and they asked me anyway, which of course they're going to do. But that just shows you Republicans are going to run for the hills on this. But how long they can actually do this, it's clear there's going to be more and more headlines on this, and at some point